Right, so now that we're familiar with Parse and we've set up our server, we're going to dive a little deeper into how we can save and retrieve information on Parse server running on our EC2 instance. So first off, I'm going to challenge you to delete the code that's there and then save a new object called users and have a name in that object which is equal to your name. That's it. Good luck. Did you manage it? You should just have created something like a variable called users, which is going to be a PF object with a class name of users. Remember, class names usually begin with a capital letter. And then we just set user name is equal to whatever your name is. And this is just the same terminology that we'd used for a dictionary. And then we save it. So user.save in background, and we want save in background with block. And then I'm going to double click on that block. So we get our Boolean, which tests for success. And we may or may not get an error message, hopefully not. And then we just check for if success. We didn't do this last time actually, so don't worry if you didn't do this, but from now on, we should check to see if there has been success. Then we'll print object saved. If not, then we'll check to see if there's an error. And if so, we'll print that error. If not, we'll just print error. There we go. So that's a slightly fuller version of the code for saving an object on Parse. So we create it as a PF object. We set any values that we need, and we can of course have more than one here. Then we use the save in background command with a success or error, and hopefully we'll see what I think we just saw. There it is, in amongst all the other info, object saved. So just to convince ourselves that all is well, we'll just jump back to the Parse dashboard and make sure that that has indeed been created on Parse. And there it is. You can see we've got a new class type of users, and there we go, name Rob. Wonderful. So all looking good so far. Now let's see how we retrieve and indeed update an object from Parse. So it's a bit like working with core data. We take our object and then we save it in the database, and then if we want to get it back, we have to retrieve it from the database. So let's first off just comment out that code so I'm not saving that multiple times. Now, to get data back from Parse, we use something called a query. And this is going to be a PF query. So Parse formula query, and we're going to do our query on a particular class name, and that class name is users. So we're going to be querying the users class here. And then there's a number of ways we can get an object. I'm going to use the get object in background with ID and with a block at the end. Almost always you're going to want to do something with the object that you've got back, and you're going to need a block to do that. So almost always select the one with the block. So the ID is the automatic object ID that's created. Here it is. So I'm just going to double click and select that. You can actually update objects right here in the dashboard if you want to. Obviously, that's probably not something you're going to want to do with a live app, but when you're testing, it can be quite useful. So the ID that we're going to search for is that one. And then you can see it's returning an optional PF object here. So it's hoping that there is going to be a PF object, but there might not be. If we got the wrong ID, then it wouldn't return anything. So I'm going to call this object and that error. And then we'll do a check to see if there's an error message, as we're used to. And if there is, we'll print it. And if there isn't, we'll check for the existence of our object. So we'll do that with an if-let command. So if-let user equals object, then user will be a PF object. So for now, let's just print user. Of course, if we wanted to get any of the particular aspects within user, then we could do something like that to get a particular variable within the object. There we go. So let's just see those in action. That should now bring back our object with user ID that and put it in the logs for us. And there we go. So you can see we've got that object with its ACL, which we're going to look at later on, but most importantly, the value that we're interested in, the name. And let's say that we wanted to update the value of that object. We can do that really easily as well. So we can just set user and then name to be whatever we like. So let's update it to Kirsten. And then we save that. So to save it, we use user.save in background, once again with a block. And as before, we'll have success and error. And I'll just do a quick check this time to print saved, else print error. There we go. So we should now find that, with any luck, we'll see saved in the console, and then when we go back and refresh the data browser, it will have updated the name in the user object. Now actually we get an error here, and the error, intriguingly, is object not found, which I think is incorrect because the object is clearly there, but what's actually going on is this ACL. So we've mentioned it a couple of times. It's short for access control lists, and essentially it controls who can read and write to an object. So at the moment, we've got read and write access for this particular user, DFMZO, etc., but we don't have public read and write access. So I'm going to change that to public read and write, save ACL, and then run the app again. Now that's not something you're going to want to do for all of your objects, obviously, and we can update the ACL with code, but also what we don't actually have yet is an automatically created user. We'll be seeing how to do that in a couple of videos time when we make the login section of our Instagram app. And then once we have a user, that particular ACL issue won't be a problem because the default user will be able to read and write. So let's have a look now. If we scroll up, there we go. So you can see now it's saved. And if we refresh the page, we should see that updated. And there we go. So we've changed that ACL ourselves just temporarily, but later on when we're making our actual Instagram app, we'll do it automatically with code. All right, so now we know how to save, retrieve, and update objects on Parse. We're actually going to move away from Parse for a couple of videos, and we're going to see how to get images from the photo library and the camera, and then we're going to see how to create spinners and alerts within our apps, And finally, we'll be able to begin the process of making our Instagram app, starting with login and sign up. So for now, a quick break from Pass to see how we get images from the photo library and the camera.